Hey, I'm Mark. Get in here, sit down. Quiet. Oh, what now? You know what? Your friends would follow you anywhere, but really only out of morbid curiosity. Hey, speaking of morbid, how bad were things in the 1980s? Not bad at all, really. New wave music played from the cassette decks in our cars. We wore brightly colored Izod shirts. Well, those of us that weren't rich enough, we wore La Tigre. We wore Levi's 501s with the button fly, not the zipper, rolled up at the bottom. But you had to fold them first, making the cuffs tight at the ankle so you didn't look like a doof. Oh yeah, bonus points for the pony tennis shoes. Suburban white guy, not a care in the world. Yeah, except for the 70,000 nuclear missiles that the Soviet Union had pointed at us. In 1981, Ronald Reagan was inaugurated president and immediately started poking at the Soviet Union. In one speech, he referred to the Soviet Union as an evil empire. Before a press conference at another occasion, on a live mic, he announced, "I have just signed legislation outlining the Soviet Union. We begin bombing in 5 minutes." But the Soviets weren't laughing. And living 30 minutes from a major West Coast naval air station, we wouldn't be evaporated in the flash and super intense heat from the nuclear explosion like Sarah Connor in her dream sequence during Terminator 2. It would be more of a slow, painful death from radiation poisoning as nuclear fallout moved with the eastbound wind over my hometown. Bummer. Stupid Soviets. You know, the closest we got to that scenario in my lifetime, at least, was in 1983. NATO, the National Atlantic Treaty Organization, composed of the mainly free democracies of Western Europe, the United States, and Canada, initiated a war game, practice if you will, Able Archer 83, premised as a response to a Soviet aggression against West Germany. The problem was that while we were moving people and weapons toward the Iron Curtain, no one told the Soviets. Oops, no major oversight there. And as Able Archer moved into high gear, the Soviet spy network reported back to their military command about massive troop movements eastwards, sorties of NATO fighters and bombers, and the preparations being made to launch medium-range nuclear missiles. The Soviets thought it was on, so they dropped the gloves and squared up, fingers ready to press the button in retaliation, ready to launch 50,000 nuclear missiles into the United States and Western Europe, ready to vaporize 500 million people. Then the war game stopped, and the Soviets pulled their hands back from the button. It wasn't so much that cooler heads prevailed, it was luck. But it didn't take long for the actions and counteractions to be made public, and the motion picture studios took advantage of the public's collective freakout over nuclear annihilation. 2 made-for-television movies aired in 1983 depicting events leading to and following a nuclear holocaust. Bedtime became much more difficult for those of us that were high school freshmen then. Prepare to be bummed out. Let's look at the year 1983, when TV went nuclear. Let's go rogue. On March 20, 1983, NBC aired a made-for-TV special called Special Bulletin. This film was a Wells-esque, an update on H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds trope, with a mock news report set in real time. But instead of a Martian invasion, it was a group of terrorists that stole weapons-grade plutonium from a nuclear research site and built their own nuclear bomb, which they loaded onto a tugboat inside Charleston Harbor in South Carolina. Then, they kidnapped a reporter and a cameraman from the fictitious RBS News Network and used them to communicate to the outside world. Their demand is that the federal government turn over all of the detonators for all the nuclear weapons from all the military stations around Charleston. And if they didn't get the detonators, they would explode the bomb. Before and after each commercial break, NBC had to put up a note to viewers that this was not actually happening. And in Charleston itself, the word fiction had to be inserted into one corner of the TV screen. Nevertheless, NBC, like H.G. Wells before him, received 2,200 phone calls from viewers concerned that this was actually occurring. Meanwhile, back on TV, news reports from the fictional RBS network bounced back and forth between the terrorists in Charleston, the government's response in Washington, D.C. After at first disregarding the news as a hoax, the government admitted that plutonium was stolen from a Hanford, Washington research facility, then announced that they would give in to the terrorist demands. When the trucks arrived with the detonators, commandos jumped from the vehicles, attacked the tugboat, and subdued the terrorists. They soon discovered that the terrorists weren't bluffing, that they did have a bomb, and it was going to detonate in an hour. The government sends the Nuclear Emergency Search Team, NEST, onto the boat to defuse the bomb, but the terrorists have built the bomb with numerous anti-tamper devices. In a far too underrated scene, as a remote TV camera is rolling, the technicians from NEST attempt to defuse the bomb, while a nuclear physicist explains the actions to the viewers. One of the technicians trips one of the anti-tamper devices, and the bomb starts towards detonation. The tension builds as the technicians work frantically to defuse the bomb before, boom. 60 million viewers, including little Marky, long before I was rogue, sat on the edge of their seats, or their sofas, or the lazy boys, wondering, hoping, praying, oh God, that the technicians could defuse the bomb. Go, Nest Guy! Go, Nest Guy! Let him defuse the bomb! Then the RBS studio lost its feed. The bomb had exploded. Another RBS reporter was across the harbor on an aircraft carrier outside of the blast radius. Her cameraman was able to film the explosion, which resulted in the destruction of Charleston. Bummer. The movie ends with a report 3 days later, announcing that 2,000 people were killed in the nuclear explosion in Charleston and at least 25,000 people were injured. The city would be uninhabitable for many years to come. And in other news, Sparky, the water skiing squirrel, set a new world record, staying up on his skis for 5 minutes and 42 seconds. Roll credits. Special Bulletin was nominated for 6 Emmy Awards for excellence in television and won 4, including Outstanding Drama Special. Good job. Through the entire back half of summer and fall, ABC advertised its answer to Special Bulletin, The Day After, which aired on November 20th, 1983. Well, shoot. After 4 months of buildup, I had to watch, along with 100 million other viewers, at least until the bombs went off. The film is set in Kansas City, in the nearby city of Lawrence, Kansas, chosen because of its proximity to the geographic center of the United States. Along the same line, producer Nicholas Meyer wanted the story to be acted by normal people and didn't want any big stars taking attention away from the story. But wanting to sell the movie overseas, ABC demanded at least one big name, and that came in the form of Jason Robards, who played Dr. Russell Oakes. Not Oaken, Oakes, a surgeon at a hospital in Kansas City. There are other stories surrounding characters played by John Lithgow, long before Third Rock from the Sun, and the pre-Police Academy Steve Guttenberg, and others, but we'll focus on Dr. Oakes. The film also starred the citizens of Lawrence, Kansas, who were paid $75 each to shave their heads and not shower for a couple days in order to look like survivors of a nuclear holocaust. Meyer also got permission to destroy some of the city's unused buildings and place burned out cars along the street to give the city a more post-apocalyptic look. Just short of 1 hour into the film, the moment we were all waiting for, the attack begins. How would ABC Studios depict the nuclear attack? The U.S. Department of Defense was more than a bit leery of lending ABC footage to produce an anti-war film, so ABC had to make do with unclassified, stock military footage, along with footage from previous movies, a long montage of U.S. Air Force response to incoming missiles and counter-responses taken from a 1979 PBS documentary called First Strike. Widespread panic before the missiles hit KC-Mo is borrowed from a 1976 movie 2 Minute Warning. Another random destruction is taken from the 1979 movie Meteor. Other short snippets are lifted from Damnation Alley and, of all things, Superman. Splicing together the different films led to moments worthy of cinema sins. A soldier notes that a Soviet missile had taken out Beale Air Force Base in California. A few minutes later, in a scene taken from First Strike, an officer on board an airplane tells his commander that Beale, apparently not taken out, is reporting 800 missiles inbound. The most disturbing effect of the film is a montage of bombs going off and people dissolving into skeletons. A wedding ceremony, children in a classroom, a mother holding her baby, a horse in a pasture, the slices of everyday life that'll never happen again. Now, come to think of it, how'd they not hear about the attack? Oh well, all those images seared into my sophomoric brain. Now, when the attack occurs, Dr. Oakes survives by taking shelter in his Volvo station wagon. How would that be for a testimonial? Volvo Motor Company, Stockholm, Sweden, to who is still alive. 2 years ago, I bought one of your Volvo C-Class station wagons. Just the other day, my city was attacked with nuclear weapons, and I took shelter in your car. When the attack was over, I got out of my car and found that all the other cars around me were all burnt-out hulks with incinerated human corpses inside. If I ever need to buy another car, I'll make sure that it's a Volvo. Sincerely, Dr. Russell Oakes, Kansas City, Missouri. Oh yeah, the movie. After the attack, Dr. Oakes, after surviving inside of his Volvo, walks to the hospital hoping to save whomever he can. Working alongside is nurse Nancy Bauer, played by Jo Beth Williams. Hey, she's now an HTGR veteran with her second appearance. I'll be sending her a certificate along with a nice letter from myself. I'm sure she'll cherish it. Anyway, the effects of radiation sickness quickly take a toll on Dr. Oakes. And sensing his impending death, he leaves the hospital, taking a long walk to find his home. When he finally reaches the pile of rubble that was once his house, he confronts a group of squatters and orders them, "Get out of my house!" But rather than leave, they approach Dr. Oakes and offer him some of the food that they've salvaged. Roll credits. ABC encouraged parents to watch the film with their children. Great advice. And to discuss the horrors of nuclear war afterward. My own dad, God bless him, in the living room with me, looked at me after the movie and said, "Well, do you have any questions?" I said no. He replied, "Okay, good night," and he went to bed. I'm not sure that's the conversation the ABC was hoping for. A panel discussion after the film on a special edition of Nightline included physicist Carl Sagan, who noted that the nuclear arms race was tantamount to two implacable enemies standing in a room up to their ankles in gasoline. One has 9,000 matches, the other has 7,000 matches, and each of them is concerned about who has more. And although there were many that criticized Nicholas Meyer and ABC for presenting an anti-nuclear movie as propaganda on behalf of the Soviets, President Reagan himself was particularly impressed by The Day After. After watching an advanced screening, he noted in his diary that the film was very effective and left me greatly depressed. And when an intermediate range nuclear forces treaty was signed 4 years later, Reagan wrote a letter to Nicholas Meyer, noting the impact that The Day After had on him. So, where were you in 1983? Were you glued to your seat on March 20th or November 20th? Do you remember seeing these TV movies? Do you remember having trouble falling asleep after watching them? Do you remember when TV went nuclear? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you had fun. Well, I hope you learned something about life during the Cold War. If you enjoyed the commentary, you're certainly welcome to like and subscribe. It was interesting. But I won't quit my day job, and I'm still Mark Haggard. I'm a history teacher, and I've gone rogue.